Okay, so the next part of this, we're going to be going through and figuring out how do we make like a wood, plastic, metal, glass, and so on. Okay, so we're back in Maya, new scene, and again, I'm doing this just so you can see the process again. I'm taking off these divisions, getting rid of my grid, render settings, color management, mental ray, OpenEXR, that's fine there, RLE here, 960 by 540, good. And then final gatherer on as well. I like to have this 50, 0.5, and 50 just as basic settings. Okay, so now let's go through and make this bigger so we can see it better. Okay, and I'm just doing some basic materials. That's all I'm doing. All right, and it's good to kind of isolate objects and get an array of shapes when you're doing something like this. Okay. So in this case, I have a cube and I have a sphere. I could also throw in here a cylinder, and it just gives me an idea of when I'm creating these things of what they're going to look like. All right, so I'm just going to grab all three of these and I'm going to assign a Mia to it. X passes. And call it a wood Mia. We'll start off at the top wood and just work our way down. So obviously wood has a color to it. Now I don't want you thinking that you should try to remember what everything looks like, so use reference. So if you're trying to create something that's wooden, then create something that's wooden by looking at reference. And obviously with wood there's a lot of different looks to it. So if I even look at wood chair, you can see there's a difference in what this wood chair looks like compared to what that one looks like, compared to what this one looks like, okay, and that one, and this one. So you really have to kind of understand what kind of wood you're looking for and the grain structure and how things are laid out. Like this one, you can't have just grain going everywhere. You kind of have to look at it as to where they would have these pieces, okay? And it makes more sense. Like one of the big things that I see is that if you look at the legs, you can see the grain is going vertically. Sometimes people just put it in here and it just goes this way. And that's not the way it works. The grain goes with the length of these legs. And the same thing here. The longest part of this is usually where the grain follows. Okay, so we're going to go to color and we're going to click map. I'm going to go to file. We're bringing a file. I'm going to go into my desktop folder. Oh, not that. I'm going to go into my source, and under textures, here's where I have different pictures of wood. So I have a fine wood, a red wood, kind of a dirty wood, and this one. Okay, so I'm going to stick with this this wood here. I like that one, wood fine. So I'm going to copy it. I'm just going to paste it and put it in there. Okay, now I always paste it right into my source images. That way it's all collected together. Okay, so I'm going to hit 6 so I can see what it looks like. And right away you're going to see how the wood looks on this surface here is going to be different than how it looks on here. On this one it's a lot more stretched out. And on this one, we're actually getting the wood grain going different ways on every single one of these faces. See, it's going this way here. This one is going that way. If I rotate, we're going this way, okay? That's how it's being placed on there. So we're not really too concerned about the UVs right now, unless it becomes an issue, but I think I want to just leave it as getting the wood coloring. All right, so I'm also going to throw in here an ambient light, not ambient, a area light. And let's pull this up and render it, and we'll just see what we get. Okay, and I'll make sure I go in here to my color management and make sure I tell it I'm using a linear image. Oops. Pull that up even higher. Okay, so that's looking good there. Some of the properties of wood, if you look at this kind of wood that we're going to do something like this, you can see the amount of specularity and reflection that's in here. Okay, you can see the leg is reflecting or the arm is reflecting into that. So I want to create that in here. And you'll also kind of see how the specular is not super sharp. It's like spread out a bit. So I want to come down into here, grab any one of those, and I'm just pulling the reflection down a bit Okay, it's basically how much pledge is on the reflectivity is how sharp that's going to be, right? So I can also pull this glossiness down just to spread it out a little bit more. Okay. And I like to save as I go just so I can see what my progression is looking like. Okay, so you see how I've spread out that a little bit more. Okay, let's go down to BRDF. And let's take, maybe take this, add a little bit more reflection along the edges. Just going to help spread that reflection out a little bit more. Okay, that's looking good. It definitely needs to have some sort of bump to this. So I'm going to come down into my hypershade. I'm going to use our hypershade button. Click on the wood, graph it out. Okay, wood, graph. Now I'm going to middle drag the file onto wood and then just go to standard bump. Okay, now it's not going to look good right now because it's just going to be too bumpy. You really see where these grooves go in, how it's just like, you know, annihilating it. So I can take this bump down to like 0.05. Then we can get a better sense of what it's looking like. Okay. So that's better. I think I want to take this light and just adjust the light some, and maybe even bring in an HDR just so we have some extra lighting in there. I really like that kitchen table one. And pattern visibility is off. I'm pretty sure my color gain is going to have to come up some. There we go. So now we get a better representation too of just, you know, how reflective is this wood. And we can see we're actually probably a bit too reflective. So let's take this down to 0.25. We can also tint the color of the reflection. So if I click on this color swatch here, add in my gamma, and I typed it in, I could have used my preset. And I'm just going to eyedrop some of the color from this and just overly saturate it a little bit. Okay, so I just pulled it up just so we get more of an orange. Okay, that's probably a little bit too orange. Let's desaturate it some. Let's see it before and after. And that value is also part of the reflectivity amount. Okay, so there we have a pretty strong looking wood. It looks pretty much like a block of wood would look, right? All right, so wood's done. We'll call wood done. We can always adjust things later, modify it, whatever. The good thing about the way we did this is if I needed to adjust this color here, I just swap this out, grab a new image, and then we have something new. Okay, so there's wood. I'm going to leave it there, and then we'll just assign a brand new Mia. And what's the next one on the list? I believe it's plastic. And then you could start with one of these because there's actually a matte plastic or a glossy plastic. And then again, just go through and change the color. It's not going to get us there fully. It just gives us some basic properties to start with. Okay, and those are pretty good properties already. I mean, it looks like a plasticky kind of surface. But one thing I want to do is I want to go down there and add a bump to it. So I'm going to go to bump, standard bump, and I really, really like this granite for this standard bump. Okay, I know it's going to need to come down, maybe 0.02, maybe 0.01. And then here's where the cool part is I want to create a speckly pattern. So I'm just going to take all these off. I'm going to just add in some speckles. I don't want it to go crazy. Okay, plastic has this kind of like bump to it. There are some that have it more than others. Like a Lego is pretty smooth. This is pretty smooth. And you want to look at that and see what you're going after. But if you look at, I'm going to go for like plastic keyboard. And maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. Yeah, you can kind of see like there's a little speckling pattern there. If you look really close to it, you'll see it. Okay, so I want to have that in there. So let me render again. Okay, we can see that grain pattern that's on there now. Oops, there's the wood, there's the plastic. And that's pretty much looking like plastic. Let me adjust the color in it and just see if we can get a different color plastic. The color changes, you'll be surprised at how much the color will change the look of something. And I don't want you to think ever that, you know, once I create this plastic, I never have to create another plastic. No, it's just getting you a starting point and getting you to understand some of the basic fundamental facts of it. Alright, we're probably a little bit too reflective here. That's definitely looking a bit too reflective, so I'm going to take that down. Okay, the less color you have, usually the reflections are going to pop up a little bit more. There you go. So that's looking like a plasticky type material. We could also go through and adjust this a little bit. Let's take the glossiness down some more. And again, I mean, there's 500 kinds of plastic, so you really got to kind of be specific as to what you're going after. My envision is just kind of like a rough plastic toy. Not Troy, toy. Okay, and it's good too, like let's say we're using these army guys. I can bring this photo into Photoshop, and I can actually sample the colors and use that inside of Maya to get, you know, I want this green, and sample that green. You can also look at the color of the specular, you know, how bright is that. Looking at, you know, here's a light, like on his helmet, how spread out is that light? Let's go in here, let's paste our image. And I can just eyedrop, I don't want to eyedrop a shadow, I don't want to eyedrop a highlight, I want to eyedrop a flatter area. Okay, so then this gives me my hue, saturation, and brightness, 77, 86, 28. 77, 86, 28. Oh, 0.86, 0.28. There we go. 0.86 and 0.28 are percentages. So that gives me a good starting spot to kind of go through and say, okay, well, what are these guys, you know, how spread out is that specular? I think I need a little bit more glossiness or reflection happening in here with this. Even taking that color of the reflection up. So I can tell right away it's a little bit too much there. Go I'm going to go to anisotropy. Just spread this out a little bit more. Remember, this is going to like kind of streak those highlights. You can see how we're getting a little bit more streaking happening right here and right there. And I think I'm going to take the roughness up even more just to kind of spread out that coloring and take the bump up some more. Okay, and bump especially is one of those things where it's really scene dependent, object dependent, how close we are to the camera. You really have to adjust it a lot. Alright, so that's good. That's looking good. I could probably adjust the reflectivity down a little bit more, or even take this glossiness down a little bit more too. There you go, that looks better. So I have some roughness here, I have like that plasticky kind of feel to it. So that's good there. Alright, so let's go to our next one. And that's going to be metal. So let's go to Mia. Metal Mia. Alright, now here's easy one. Here's chrome. Boom, replace. And this will give you the look of chrome, a really, really reflective type thing. Okay, and it looks pretty realistic looking. We can also go down to satin metal and replace it. And we'll get this kind of brushed metal look. There you go. Now I recommend on all surfaces that you have some sort of map to them. Let me open up a map from my folder. Source, textures, metal. Okay, like let's say on our metal I wanted to add these scratches. So what I can do is go to select color range, do a little eyedrop on it, and use my fuzziness just to kind of isolate some of these scratches. I think that's going to be good. I'm just looking at the different ways in which I'm seeing this thing. The grayscale is probably the best. So let's say something like, I'll pick a different color. That highlight's just blowing it out. There we go, just add that in. There we go. So something like that. And I'll make a new layer. There we go. So now I have a new image that looks like this. It's just like these little scratches and scuff marks. So let me save that into my work folder, playing around, images. And I'm going to save it all as TIFFs, because sorry, not TIFFs, IFs, because I prefer IFs. Scratches. Save it as a Maya, okay. And then in here, I can just go to my reflection color, or even reflectivity, and go to File, and add scratches. I don't know why I didn't save it in the right spot. Maybe I didn't save it in the right spot. Work, playing around, source images. If I didn't. Okay, and what this is going to do is give us a different look. If we look at this, it's basically using black, so it's saying no reflection in these areas, but in the white areas you have a lot of reflection. We're probably going to want to reverse it so that we have a lot of reflection, and then it reverses it. We're getting a lot more reflection than I assumed we would. Let's save this, and let me invert it, and save it out again. And one thing I like to do is go to my preferences here, and file handling, and where it says save to original folder, I like to check that off. Okay, so that way when I go to save as, it pops me into that last folder I saved in. Alright, so I'm just re-saving that if. I'm going to reload it, save this, yes. I'm going to re-render, and that way I can look at it and see what it looks like with the image reversed. Sometimes the scratches are just too small to even see. Oh, also I have quadratic filter type on. I want to turn that off. Okay, but we'll look at and see what this looks like first. Okay, not seeing a huge difference at all. Let's turn that off and then render. And sometimes it's just something that's inside of that Mia that's kind of causing other things to override. Let me go back and reset that to Chrome. There we go. And you notice my file's stuck there. So alright, so now let's save this again. And we'll invert, save, if, scratches. Reload it. And it really shouldn't be as bright as it is. Let me see why it's doing that. Nope, I was putting it in the wrong spot. For whatever reason, I decided to put it on reflectivity. I want to put it on color. Okay, so I put this on color. That's the bad one. Okay, so let me render this out again. Okay, that's not the bad one, but that's the opposite one. All right, so we're basically getting nothing except for where it's scratched. We're getting these like little bits of reflection. So let me invert it and resave it. Reload it. And then we can render this out, and you'll see that we have now a reflective object, except for these spots where we just have these little bits of corrosion or something on there. Okay, so it doesn't look like it's a perfectly smooth surface. Okay, and I can adjust inside Photoshop. I can just adjust that amount using my levels. Okay, I can really crank this up and get some more, or I can pull the white and get less. Okay, it's all depending on what my end result is that I'm after. I'll save it again after I adjusted it, just so you can see the before and after of doing that kind of thing. We can also create like a dirt map, and we can create everything for plastic and all these other ones. So obviously a lot less scratches that are on there now. Okay, and then I want to turn this off, and you'll see why is because this is basically it's softening it. We turn that off, we don't get softening. It just makes it a little bit crisper, a little bit clearer, especially if you have text. There we go. Okay, so now we have this nice coloring that's inside there. All right, now we could also add the same thing if we had refractions. We could add it here. We could also add another map here for different coloring. We could have, let's go to the weight and go to a ramp. And basically I can take this red, and I'm getting a ramp like this. Okay, so it's white on the top and black on the bottom. And so what's going to happen is our diffuse is not going to be present on the bottom of the object or in certain spots. Okay, so it just gives us a little bit different look. You can kind of see what we're getting here as opposed to here. Okay, so there's lots of different things that we can do. I'm actually going to take that weight off and just leave that back to 1. Okay, so metal is done. Next one is going to be glass, and we already talked about glass, but I'm just going to do it again real quick. I go here, and there's several different glass ones: frosted, physical, solid, thick, thin. I like to just stick to one of these. Let's say I do physical glass, and then I render it out. I see what it looks like, and then I might change it for something else. Okay, like that's what the physical glass looks like. Well, let's see what solid glass looks like. And again, it's going to be based on your scene and based on other things you have going on as to which one is going to be the best one. Okay, so you can see here I get a little bit more thickness to it, right? Because it doesn't look like it's totally transparent. I can save that, and I can go to thick. I was at solid before, now I'm going to thick. So it looks like physical and thick are about the same in this case. Then we have thin. Okay, now it looks like we have basically like a sheet of glass in here. You can see the refraction is completely different. You can see how much refraction we're getting here. When we pop it there, it's basically like a shell of glass. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a physical glass or a solid glass. I like that one the best. And then under refraction, we have this color. Let's go and map a gamma to it. And then we can, let's say, give it a color. And then that's how we can tint the color of this. There we go. So now we've given this glass a green kind of color, just based on this color that's inside the refraction. Okay. We could also take the transparency down. We could also click on this transparency here and go to our file and map our scratches to it. And what we're going to get is that transparency with some scratches. It's not going to be as obvious as the other one. Nope, not really even seeing it. Oops, I probably did the same exact thing I did before. I mapped it to nothing. And that worked there. And sometimes it doesn't want to connect it, and I have to actually do that in the hypershade. So I'm just going to go to my, bring this window here so I can see the glass. Here's file 4, which is my scratches. I'm just going to middle drag it onto transparency. Sometimes it doesn't connect it, and you just have to middle drag it manually to connect it in. But I may have to actually connect it to the transparency color instead, just like I did with reflection. Yep, I'm not really seeing a difference at all. Okay. I kind of expected that, so let's just map it onto color. And now we have these little scratch or scuff marks on top of this thing, just to give it, again, a more realistic look of what we're after. Okay? I'm just going to break that and leave it as that gray color. Okay, so glass is good. The next one on the list is rubber. Rubber is essentially like plastic, okay? Except it just is typically a different color. Obviously they can be the same colors, but in this case I'm going to go with more of like a black, and I'm really going to take the reflectivity down, and I really only want the highlight. I'm not going to have a whole lot of reflection on this. I'm thinking of more of like a rubber tire, tiare. Okay, where we're really getting this really diffuse or really spread out specular. Okay, so we'll just take this down. And we spread this thing out, maybe even, let me pull it up a little bit more. Oops. I want the reflectivity to be bigger, with the glossiness to be more spread out. And then again, I probably want to go under anisotropy and add some anisotropy to this, but that's too much. All right, and I'll pull this up. Let's go down to anisotropy, pull that up. And see that my sample here kind of quit. Maybe have to reboot Maya or something. Alright, so now we're getting more into that rubbery type look, and you'll actually notice, like in this one, there's actually like a hint of blue to this picture. This one we have more of this like spread out. There it goes. Now our picture's back. So maybe a little bit too much anisotropy here. There we go. Now we're starting to get that rubbery kind of look to it. And again, we want to go through that bump and add in just a standard bump. And again, I like to use Granite. It's just a good bump. Should be a little bit stronger than we had on the plastic. There we go. So now we have something that looks more like a plasticky type or rubbery type material. Okay. And I'm not adjusting these things all the way to the end. I'm just kind of taking them out there. And then the final one, concrete, it's basically going to be the same exact thing that we've talked about. But in concrete's case, we want to get a picture of concrete because this is, you see all the color variations that are in here. So you want to use this as a color map. Okay. So kind of basically like we did with wood. So let me go and add a new Mia. And we'll add a file. And let me go and grab concrete, which I don't have anything here. Alright, so I'm going to go to cgtextures.com. I'm going to go to my login. If you don't have an account here, get one. You're going to need it. It's free. And I'm going to look up concrete. They actually have a section here, but this way I can kind of search and say, okay, well, what kind of concrete do I want? And in this case, I'm looking for just like a concrete ground. There's some decals, some road barriers. Actually, that's good there. I like this one. And I'm not a premium member anymore, so I can only get what is available. So in this case, I'm going to grab this one. Alright, so I have that. So let me just paste it here. And we can do the same tricks we did with the metal, which is add some of that other stuff in there. Okay, and again, this could look like more like a marble if we left it really glossy and shiny. Or we can take some of this roughness down, take some of this reflectivity down, specular down. Add a bump to it, so I can already just kind of go in. Oops. And do that same little trick with color range. I'm just kind of isolating some of these more important areas. Like that. Okay, and then I can just make a new image. I'm just filling one side with white, one side with black. Okay, it just helps bring up some of that detail. And I can also go in and say, okay, well, maybe this is too much detail. Maybe I just want to paint manually and erase some of the stuff that's in here. Okay, so I could also do that. By just painting white, I'm just overriding it. So white is bumpy, or wherever the white is no bump and black is no bump. So I'm just erasing some of that stuff that's in there. So then I'll just save in here and say concrete scratches. You really want to use the same image so that you get stuff that lines up in about the same spot. And I'm going to go to the reflectivity color and connect this in, concrete scratches. And I'm also going to go to my bump, standard bump, file. And instead of me going in here and loading in concrete scratches again, I'll show you what it looks like in the hypershade. There's concrete. I basically have this file here is the color, and then 7 and 8 are the same exact file. Okay, I don't need 7 and 8 to be the exact same file. I can just delete this one and then middle drag 7 onto here and say default. Okay, that way it just connects it to there. So I have basically those two files coming in under the same thing. That way if I change it, I only have to update one, I don't have to update both. And I never lowered the bump, so it's going to be a crazy bump. But you can see based on what we might want, we may want to have this much bump in here. We may want to have that much grit and grain to this type of thing. Okay, so I'm actually going to lower it a little bit. Make sure quadratic is turned off here. And bump, there it is. And let me go to file 7, make sure that's off too. Good. We'll save and re-render this. Okay, that looks good. I'm happy with the way that concrete looks. The bump definitely seems to be working. Cool. So let's go through this now. And it's all labeled. And what I'm going to do is just grab this sphere. I'm just going to duplicate it 1, 2, 3, 6 times. There we go. Okay, so just start on this side. Assign existing. Our first one was wood. Doesn't matter. Metal, plastic, glass, rubber, wood, metal, plastic, glass, wood, plastic, metal, rubber. Alright, so now that I have that, let me scoot this guy back a little bit. I'm going to take a little rendering of what all these look like together. There we go. And it just gives you a good idea of, okay, I'm creating a catalog of textures. I need to know what things look like. You can actually save this out as a separate image and just kind of reference it. Okay. You could also take these from the Hypershade. There's concrete, glass, metal, plastic, rubber, and wood. These are the basic ones that you're going to use over and over and over again. So you can go to File and export them and say Basic Texture or Materials. There you go. So now you have basic materials. Next time you want them in a new file, let's save. I'm going to call this Shaders. I'm in a new scene, so I would just go to the Hypershade. I would just go to Import, Shaders. Oops, not Shaders. Import basic materials. There we go. And now my Hypershade, I'm going to have all those materials ready to go. Okay, so that's our last video in this. Once you've gone through these, then you can start on the next section.